My phone would not stop ringing, and I already knew exactly who it was. The same people who left me behind when I was 8, the same ones who said it was temporary, like I was something they could store somewhere until life got easier. And for years, I believed that lie. I waited, I stayed quiet, I tried to be easy to love, but they never came back. Not when I was alone, not when I needed them. Only now, after everything I built started making money, after my story went public, after my life finally looked like something worth coming back to, suddenly they found me again, asking to talk, asking for help, like nothing had happened, like I owed them something. But here is what they did not expect. I let the phone ring. I watched their calls stack up, and I already knew how this was going to end, because this was not about forgiveness anymore. This was revenge, quiet, legal, and final. And before I open that door and let them sit across from me, this is your host, and this story does not end the way they think it will. Chapter 1. My name is Ilara Vance. I am 32 years old. I run a bakery chain in San Diego called Second Morning. People like to describe my life as stable, controlled, earned. They say words like discipline and resilience, as if those things grew in a quiet place. They did not. They grew out of something I do not talk about unless I have to. My parents split up when I was 8. They divided everything between them. Furniture, bills, my brother, my sister. Just not me. I was the middle child, old enough to understand what was happening, young enough to believe they would not choose someone else over me. The phone started ringing a little after 9 that morning. I let it go the first time. I was in the kitchen, checking a batch of dough, signing off on an order, moving through my routine the way I always do. The ovens were steady. The air smelled like butter and sugar. My hands knew what to do. The phone rang again, then again. By the 4th call, I turned it over so I would not have to see the screen. Unknown number, no voicemail, just persistence. Something about it made my chest tighten. By the 6th call, my hands were not steady anymore. I told myself it was nothing. Wrong number, sales call, something stupid. But my body did not believe that. There are certain sounds you do not forget, not because they are loud, but because of what they carry with them. The way something repeats when it's trying to reach you, the way silence sits behind it. That ringing felt like that. I pressed my palm against the counter and tried to slow my breathing. It did not help. It pulled me backward anyway. Tucson, Arizona, a small house with a cracked driveway and a kitchen table that always felt a little too small for all of us. My father had just lost his job. He said it was temporary. Then he stopped saying much at all. My mother started working longer hours. The house got quieter, but not in a good way. They sat us down one evening and told us they were separating. They said it was not our fault. They said families change shape. They said we'd be okay. I remember watching their faces more than I remember the words. I was trying to understand something that didn't make sense yet. My brother sat still. My sister cried and held on to my father like she could stop him from leaving. Nobody asked where I would go. Not at first. Later that night, I stood outside their bedroom door. The light was on. Their voices were low, but not low enough. You take him. I can't handle more right now. She's too much. There was a pause. Then my mother said it. Maybe just for a little while. That was the moment everything settled into place. A few days later, a social worker sat at our kitchen table with a stack of forms. Everything looked clean, organized, like this was just another situation to process. My father signed something called a temporary placement agreement. He did not look at me while he signed it. My mother fixed my collar even though it didn't need fixing. Her hands were gentle. That part confused me more than anything else. "We'll come back soon," she said. "Just a few weeks," my father added. They sounded certain, or maybe they needed me to believe they were. The drive to the shelter was quiet. I watched the road like I was supposed to remember it, like knowing the way back would matter. Hope House was not what I expected. It was a children's shelter run through social services, a place for kids who didn't have somewhere stable to be. Inside, everything smelled like cleaning supplies and old blankets. The intake office had bright lights that made everything look flat. A woman behind the desk smiled at me in a careful way. They asked questions: name, age, allergies. Then they asked for an emergency contact. There was a pause. Not long, just enough for my mother said she would fill it out later. No one said I was unwanted. They just filled out the paperwork like I didn't belong anywhere. My father signed where he was told. That moment stayed with me. My mother hugged me before they left. My father put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed once. "Be good," he said. They walked out. They didn't turn around. That first night, I kept my shoes on when I went to bed. I thought if they came back late, I needed to be ready. They did not come back that night. They did not come back that weekend. They did not come back the next. I found a spot by the window in the common room where I could see the parking lot. I sat there every day at the same time. If I watched long enough, I told myself, they would come back. One afternoon, a car pulled in and my chest tightened so fast it almost hurt. It was not them. A girl sitting nearby asked if my parents said they were coming. I nodded. She shrugged. They always say that. For a long time, I thought maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I was harder to love. Maybe I was the problem they couldn't fix. But the truth was simpler than that. They made a choice, and I was the one they chose to leave. Back in the present, the phone stopped ringing. For a second, the silence felt louder than the sound had been. Then the screen lit up. A message. "It's Owen." I stared at it longer than I should have. My brother, a name I hadn't seen attached to my life in more than 20 years. Another message came right after. "Please call me back." Around me, the kitchen kept moving. Timers went off. Someone laughed out front. A delivery truck backed into the alley. Everything was working exactly the way it was supposed to, except this, because after all this time, after everything that hadn't been said, they had found me again, and I knew it was not because they missed me. It was because they needed something. Chapter 2. Hope House taught me something faster than any adult ever did. Do not expect too much. The first few days, I still believed them. I made a thank you card because one of the staff said it might help me feel better. I sat by the window in the common room every afternoon and watched the parking lot like it was my job. I counted cars, then days, then the space between one visit and the next that never came. At first, people said, "when your family comes back." After a while, it turned into, "if there are updates." No one announced the change, it just slipped in like it belonged there. I felt it in the way they looked at me, careful but already moving on. My 9th birthday came and went without anyone saying it out loud. No call, no card, nothing with my name on it. I did not remind anyone. I told myself it did not matter. That night, I lay awake and stared at the ceiling and realized something had ended. That was the day I stopped waiting. A few weeks later, Miss Bell called my name. She stood in the doorway with a folder pressed against her chest. "Pack your things, Alara. We are moving you." I asked where. She said a foster home, just for a little while. Everyone said that, just for a little while. The first house was quiet in a way that felt empty. A couple in their 50s showed me a fold-out bed in the corner of a room full of boxes. Dinner was at 6, breakfast at 7, chores in between. Stay out of the way, that was the rule no one wrote down. It was not cruel, that made it harder to explain. One evening, I stood in the doorway while they talked to a neighbor. "She's temporary," the woman said, like she was explaining something that wouldn't last. I nodded, even though no one was talking to me. Temporary. I learned to move quietly, to open the right cabinets, to leave the others alone. If I made myself small enough, I would not be noticed in the wrong way. A few months later, Miss Bell came back. "We're going to try a different placement." I asked why. She paused, then said, "It would be a better fit." The answer did not matter. I packed my bag again. The second house was loud. Too many people, too little space. The fridge never seemed full. "You better grab what you want fast," one of the older kids told me. He was right. I learned to eat quickly, to take less, to say yes before someone could say no. At night, I listened to the other kids talk about their families. Some of them were going back. Some of them believed they were. I did not say much. "You don't talk a lot," a girl said to me. I shrugged. There's nothing to say. Months passed, and another move. The third house looked nicer from the outside. Clean yard, quiet street. The woman who opened the door smiled like she had practiced it. "We're going to take good care of you," she said. I wanted to believe her. For a few days, everything was polite. Then the small things started. She corrected the way I folded towels. She watched how I ate. She told me to speak more clearly, then told me to speak less. "You should be more grateful," she said once when I did not finish my plate. I said, "Thank you. Say it like you mean it." I said it again, louder. "Better," she said. It took me a while to see it. Her kindness depended on who was watching. One afternoon, she called me into the kitchen when the house was quiet. "You know why kids end up here, right?" I shook my head. "Because they're difficult, because they're not easy to keep." She leaned on the counter and looked at me like it was simple. "Maybe if you were easier to love, someone would have kept you." The words were not loud, but they stayed. That night, I repeated them in my head, trying to find a way around them. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was something wrong with me that I could fix if I tried hard enough. That was when the idea settled in. Useful children survive longer. I started doing more, cleaning without being asked, helping the younger kids, staying out of the way. I stopped asking questions. I stopped crying where anyone could see. If I could be useful enough, maybe I wouldn't be moved again. One afternoon, I sat in the hallway outside the office as Miss Bell spoke in a low voice. "We may need to move her into long-term placement." No one said abandoned, no one said they were not coming back, but I understood. Later, Miss Bell sat across from me with my file open. "How are you doing here, Alara?" I said, "I'm fine." She nodded and wrote it down. That was how it worked. They asked, I answered, it became a note. School transfers, placement reports, case notes. My life stacked into paperwork that followed me from house to house. Everyone said the system was there to help, but no one explained why it felt like no one was actually responsible for me. I stopped thinking of it as help. They called it placement, they called it support. To me, it felt like being passed from one place to another because no one wanted to keep me. At some point, the sadness changed shape. It stopped showing up in tears. It went quiet. I learned how to disappear in a room without leaving. I learned how to speak just enough. I learned how to exist in a way that didn't require anyone to choose me. "You were very easy to have around," a teacher told me once. I smiled and said, "Thank you." Inside, I understood what that meant. Easy to have around meant easy to leave. For a long time, I thought maybe I had done something wrong. Maybe I was the problem. Then it became clear in a way I couldn't ignore. They made a choice, and I was the one they chose to leave. I didn't think about revenge back then. I just wanted to get through the day without being moved again. But looking back, that was where it started. By the time I stopped counting how many places I had been, I'd also stopped asking if anyone was coming back. The answer had been there all along. And that was the moment I stopped wondering if they would come back and started wondering why they never tried. Chapter 3. I stopped looking for answers that never came and started paying attention to the things I could actually control. The first place that made sense was a kitchen. I was 14 when they sent me to help at a church program on weekends. It was supposed to keep me busy. That was the official reason. The real reason was simpler. If I was somewhere else, I was easier to manage. The kitchen was small, worn down, everything a little off, but still working. The man in charge was Raymond Hale, though everyone just called him Mr. Hale. He did not ask where I came from. He pointed at a bag of flour. Level it. I did it the way I thought was right. He shook his head. Again. I tried again. Watch. He showed me once. Clean movement. No hesitation. Now you. I did it again. He nodded. Do it 10 more times. That was the entire lesson. No talk about feelings, no questions about my past, just steps and results. Too much water, not enough salt. You rushing. Slow down. Every mistake had a fix. Every fix had a result. That was new to me. Mini shift. People changed their minds. Systems failed. Adults said things they did not mean, but recipes did not. If you followed them, they worked. If they did not, you adjusted. One afternoon, I pulled a tray from the oven and just stood there. It had risen perfectly. Mr. Hale looked at me. You gonna stare at it all day? I did it right. He shrugged. You followed the steps. Do it again tomorrow. That was the closest thing to approval I got. It was enough. Around the same time, someone else started paying attention. Miss Carter, the school counselor. She called me into her office one day. You like control, she said. I frowned. I like things to work. She nodded. Exactly. You like systems. You like knowing that if you do something right, you get a result. I did not answer. She leaned back. That is not a bad thing. You just have to use it in the right place. No one had ever framed me like that before. Not quiet, not easy. Capable. That stayed with me. When I aged out, I did not have a plan. I had habits. I enrolled in a community college culinary program in Arizona. It was not impressive. It didn't need to be. It was structured. 2013 to 2016, I learned everything I could. After that, I worked. Diner shifts before sunrise, bakery jobs that paid just enough, cleaning offices at night when everything else was closed. I stacked hours the way I used to stack silence. One job turned into another, one skill turned into something useful. I did not have backup, so I built routines instead. 2019, I used what little I had saved to rent a booth at a farmer's market. The first week, I made a mistake. I priced everything too low. I sold out, and I still lost money. That night, I sat in my car with a notebook full of numbers that didn't work. That's when she showed up, Tessa Monroe. She had been watching my booth before she said anything. You know you're undercharging. I looked up. I sold everything. She crossed her arms. And you still lost money. That's not a win. I hesitated. I'm still figuring it out. She pulled a chair closer. Good. Then listen. She started asking questions. Cost of ingredients. I told her. Labor. I paused. Overhead. I shook my head. She let out a small laugh. You're not running a hobby. You're running a business. Start acting like it. That conversation changed everything. Mini climb. I started tracking every cost, every sale, every mistake. I stopped guessing. Tessa kept coming back. You planning to scale this? I'm planning not to go broke. She smiled. Same thing if you do it right. Somewhere in the middle of that, I met Adrian Cole. He came by late one afternoon. You made these? Yeah. He took a bite. You know what you're doing. I'm learning. He nodded. That's how it starts. He did not ask questions I didn't want to answer. He just stayed. 2020, I signed a lease in San Diego. The space was small, the rent was high, it almost didn't work. There was a month in the first year where I came close to losing it. I remember sitting on the floor after closing, running numbers again and again. If one more thing went wrong, I wouldn't make it. You look like you're about to break something, Tessa said when she walked in. I might lose this place. She sat across from me. Then fix what you can fix. I'm already doing that. Then do it better. I did. I adjusted. cut costs, changed pricing, watched every detail. The store survived. Then it stabilized. Then it grew. One location became three. Three became more. By 2025, Second Morning had 8 locations. That's when people started paying attention. Local press, small features, then a bigger interview. I almost turned it down. "You should do it," Adrian said. "I don't want to explain everything." "You don't have to. Just tell what you want to tell." So I did. I talked about the work, the process, the hours, and I mentioned the past. Not all of it, just enough. 3 days later, the call started. At first, 1 call, then 2, then the same number again and again, then different numbers. Messages followed. "We need to talk. You don't know everything. We've been trying to find you." The tone changed each time. Calm, then urgent, then something close to desperate. I stared at the screen and felt something settle in. After all these years, they came back. Not when I had nothing, when I had something. I remembered a voice telling me I was hard to love. Now those same people were trying to find their way back in. That was not a coincidence. People don't come back without a reason, and it's rarely the one they say out loud. I wasn't thinking about helping them. I was thinking about understanding exactly what they wanted first. I didn't call back. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Tessa. She picked up fast. "You sound off. I need you to look into something." A pause. "What kind of something?" "The kind that only shows up when there's something to take." She exhaled. "You think it's them?" "I know it is." Another pause. "You want everything. Everything." She didn't ask more. "Give me a day." I hung up and set the phone down. For a long time, I focused on surviving. Then I focused on building. Now I was paying attention to something else. Why they came back and what it really was going to cost them. Chapter 4. Tessa called me the next evening. I could hear it in her voice before she said anything. She had already figured it out. "I found them." I stayed quiet for a second. "Tell me." She did not rush. "Your mom filed for divorce last year. It was messy. Debt, some legal filings. Nothing criminal, but not clean either." I leaned back in my chair. "And my dad?" "He's in Phoenix. Medical records tied to his name. Multiple hospital visits. It looks serious." I closed my eyes for a moment. "And Owen?" A pause. "He lost his job. Something involving money. Not big enough to make headlines, but big enough that no one wants to hire him right now." "Of course." "And Chloe?" "She's not with them. Hasn't been for a while." That part did not surprise me. Silence settled between us. "No one tried to find me before this," I said. "No," Tessa replied. "Nothing." "Of course not. After all these years, they came back. Not when I needed them, when I finally didn't." "I want to meet them," I said. "You sure?" "Yes." "Where?" I looked out into the empty dining area of the store. "Here. Not their house, not somewhere neutral. My place. My rules." Tessa exhaled slowly. "Okay, then we do it your way." We set the time. After closing, no staff, no noise. I told Adrian that night. "You want me there?" he asked. "No." "You sure?" "I need to do this myself." He nodded once. "I'll be close." That was enough. The night came faster than I expected. I locked the doors myself, turned off most of the lights, left just enough so everything was clear but not comfortable. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence settle into the room. Every table, every chair, everything in that space existed because I had built it. No one handed it to me. No one came back to help. And now they were walking into it. They stepped inside like they were unsure if they belonged. For years, I was the one no one chose. Now they were standing in front of me, hoping I would choose them. Marlene walked in first, then Daniel, then Owen. They looked older, not just in years, smaller somehow, like life had taken things from them they could not get back. For a second, no one spoke. "You look good," my mother said. I held her gaze. You did not come here to say that. She looked down. Daniel cleared his throat. We just wanted to talk. You've been calling. Owen nodded. We didn't know if you'd answer. I did not. Silence again. They sat across from me. The distance between us felt intentional, measured. Marlene folded her hands. It was hard back then, she said. Everything was falling apart. We didn't know what to do. Of course, everyone has a version of the past that sounds better when they need something. Daniel leans forward. We thought it would be temporary. I let them talk. They used words like overwhelmed, complicated, mistakes. They rebuilt the past into something softer, something they could live with. When they were done, I reached down and pulled the folders onto the table, one by one. I slid them forward. Owen looked at them. What is this? Read. He opened the first. Placement records. Dates, signatures. The second, school transfers. The third, case notes. The last one, intake form. Emergency contact blank. They moved through the pages slowly. No one spoke. I watched their faces instead of the papers, watched the moment it stopped being a story they could control. I stood up then, not because I had to, because I could. For the first time, I was the one holding the space. You did not lose me, I said. The words were steady. You left me. No one corrected me. No one argued, because they couldn't. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I told them everything. The waiting, the window, the birthday no one remembered, the houses, the moves, the words that stayed. I let it sit there the way it had sat with me for years. Marlene wiped her eyes. We didn't know, she said. You didn't ask. That landed harder than anything else. Daniel leaned forward. We're here now. Of course, they were. That was the only part that mattered. Owen shifted in his seat. Dad's sick, he said. There it was, the reason. Hospital bills are adding up, he continued. Things haven't been easy. Marlene nodded quickly. We thought maybe we could come together, as a family. Family. The word felt wrong in that room. We're proud of you, she added. We see what you've built. I almost smiled at that. They saw it. That's why they were here. We just need some help, Owen said. There it was. Not maybe, not hope, need. I looked at them, really looked. For a long time, I thought I needed this moment. I thought I needed them to come back. But sitting there, I realized something else. I didn't need anything from them. They needed something from me. And for the first time, I let myself see them the way they had always seen me, as a solution. For years, I was the one no one chose. Now they were sitting there waiting for me to decide, waiting for me to let them back in. I let the silence stretch just long enough for it to settle into them. They didn't come back for me. They came back for what I became. And for the first time, they were the ones who had to wait and see if I would choose them. I did not answer them right away. I let the silence stay where it was, sitting between us like something none of them knew how to move around. For a long time, I thought this moment would feel bigger, louder, like something inside me would finally settle. Instead, it felt simple, clear. I looked at them again, not as the people I used to wait for, but as they actually were now, tired, careful, watching me the way I used to watch that window, hoping something would change. Waiting. That was the part that stayed with me. They were waiting, and I was not. I leaned back in my chair. No. The word landed clean. Marlene blinked. What do you mean? I mean, no, I said. I am not helping you. Daniel shifted forward. Ilara, we are not asking for much. You are asking for everything. Owen leaned in. We just need some support, just until things settle. I shook my head. I am not paying medical bills. I am not covering debts. I am not stepping into your life to fix it. Marlene's voice tightened. We are still your family. I held her gaze. You stopped being that when you left. That one stayed in the air. Daniel exhaled slowly. We made mistakes. You made choices. That difference mattered. He tried again. We are trying to make it right now. I nodded once. Then say it right. No one spoke. I let the silence stretch just enough. Say what actually happened, I said. Not hard, not complicated. Say it. Marlene looked down at her hands. Daniel stared at the table. Owen shifted in his seat. No one said it. Of course they did not, because saying it out loud would mean they couldn't hide from it anymore. You left your daughter, I said. The words did not need to be loud. They just needed to be true. No one corrected me. No one argued, because there was nothing to argue. I sat back again. For a long time, I thought forgiveness meant letting people back in, I said. I thought if I ever got this moment, I would say yes just to prove I was not that kid anymore. I paused. But I am not that kid anymore. That was the part they did not understand. Forgiveness does not mean access. It does not mean I owe you anything. It means I get to decide what happens next. I turned slightly and looked at Chloe. She had not said much, just watched everything play out. Her eyes met mine, steady, uncertain in a different way. You left, I said. She nodded. I did not know everything back then. I know. Another quiet moment. If you want to talk, we can, but not like this, not tied to all of this. Her shoulders dropped a little. Okay. That was all I needed from her. I looked back at the others. This does not change, I said. Marlene opened her mouth, then closed it. Daniel looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Owen leaned back, defeated. There was nothing left to negotiate. They had come here expecting a way in, a solution, a second chance. What they found instead was a boundary, and they did not know what to do with that. They stood slowly. Chairs shifted across the floor. Marlene hesitated, like she might try one more time. She did not. They walked to the door. This time, I watched them leave, and they did not turn around. The door closed behind them. For a moment, I just sat there, listening to the quiet, not waiting, just existing in it. They thought coming back would fix something, but there was nothing left to fix. They did not choose me back then, and now I was the one choosing. I stood up and walked through the space, slow, steady, letting my eyes move over everything. The tables, the counter, the kitchen behind me. Every part of it existed because I built it. No one gave it to me. No one came back to help, and no one was going to take it from me. The back door opened softly. Adrian stepped inside. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. He walked over and pulled me to a quiet hug. I let myself lean into it, not because I needed someone to hold me together, because I chose to. That was the difference. I pulled back for a moment. It's done, I said. He nodded. Yeah. We stood there for a second longer, then he stepped back. I walked to the front, turned off the last of the lights, and stood there with my hand on the switch for a second. After all these years, they came back, when I finally succeeded, and I said no. I turned the lights off, locked the door, stepped outside. The night air felt steady, real. For the first time in a long time, I was not waiting for anything. I was just moving forward. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have helped them after everything, or would you have walked away and never looked back? Because sometimes the hardest thing is not surviving what happened, it's deciding that you don't owe it anything anymore. They were never part of what I built. They were the reason I had to build it.